Buddy, that's a weird angle. I'm Jason Klom. I'm the host of the Comedy on Vinyl podcast. All of 2017, I'm listening to a comedy album a day. I have no idea if my phone's going to make it. Now, this video blog format might be familiar to you if you know anything about my project Looking Forward 2016, which you can find at lookingforwardmovie.com. Why not promote it? It's my mockumentary that I recorded all of last year and I'm editing this year. Now, you can watch the rest of this video, by the way, at youtube.com/comedyonvinyl. So I listened to 3 albums. I'm playing big time catch up. A friend just got married, and I actually just had to rush a bunch of work for the Comedy on Vinyl book that I'm putting together. Some people, every once in a while it'll happen, somebody will just request, hey, can you get us a sample chapter on this? And it's like, I haven't finished that chapter, and it involves a bunch of original research. But sure, let me see what I can do. So I had to put together a bunch of work, so I'm falling behind. But again, there's no doubt I'm going to do the 365. It just might take me, I'm just going to be doing them in chunks. So the 3 albums I'm doing, now that I'm about to come to a red light, I would not do this if I wasn't coming to a red light, although we're going to. So we got Stiller and Meara, their first album. Can you see that? Yep. We got Mom's Mabley at the White House Conference. Okay. And we got Maxwell House Coffee Time with George Burns and Gracie Allen. Now, they're all fun. I'd always been told to listen to Mom's Mabley, which, by the way, are these the most disparate possible? I don't know. But I've always been told to listen to Mom's Mabley. I hadn't listened to Mom's Mabley, and it's always one of those things you actually cannot. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I tend to kind of buy the cheaper albums because I want to sample stuff. I'd rather buy it than just listen to it on YouTube. I'd rather have it in my hands to get some kind of an idea of what the experience was like listening to this for the first time on vinyl. And so you get Mom's Mabley. You don't get them in the cheap seats. That's not how you say that, but you don't get those in the cheap section usually. So recently, my wife, who's very kind, decided, hey, I'm going to help you out because for all of 2017, I'm also doing only women comics. You'll notice here I did 2 pairings, but obviously half women. And their contribution cannot be, it can be underestimated because that's how people do, but it can't be overestimated. They did wonderful things for these groups. But where the hell was I? I'm not sure. And why did I just put my face in the camera? I don't know. But yeah. So anyway, this is what happens when you drive and record at the same time. Mom's Mabley, I had just never listened to, and she actually mostly does street jokes, which sounds like I'm using the word urban for blank, which I'm not. I'm saying she mostly does legit street jokes, the same kind that I just heard Bob Newhart do on stage. That was a lot of what he did. It's just so fella's walking down the street. Any joke that begins with this fella's walking down the street, he would say fella. She'd be a little more descriptive. What's really great is her character. I mean, she's an old woman who clearly used to be something of a singer, and she can carry a tune just fine. It's just she's singing through gums. She's singing through an old lady's body, and it's incredibly charming to listen to when she sings. And most of her humor is race relations based, not really race based necessarily. She's although there's a couple. But the most interesting thing about this album, I think, is that she starts it out with talking about how she just came back from the White House, which I'm assuming is not true, but just saying, you basically telling the president he was giving all these pleasantries. She basically told him to shut up. She said, all I care about is that the president signs the civil rights bill. That's all I care about. That's kind of what puts this into a real, it's really easy to peg when this was. She just wants LBJ to sign the civil rights bill. And the rest of it, then she just goes into her comedy, which is, it's an intriguing way to do, again, there's no satire. She's just, here's a joke, here's a sincere moment within the joke, and then the rest of it is her doing street jokes and a couple songs. And I have another Mom's Mabley album that we're going to talk about later as well, but, and it's fun to listen to. I'll admit, I have trouble understanding her the whole time because her old lady voice is a thick old lady voice, so it's hard to get through sometimes, but fun, and the audience was just shitting themselves. So that was a ton of fun. The next one then that I listened to was the Maxwell House Coffee Time record, which is interesting because this is the kind of stuff we kind of take for granted now, because at some point, once they could get these on cassette, the old time radio, the OTR things were pretty ubiquitous. You could get them. You could get an entire series run. Whatever was available, you could get on cassette tape, and those were always fun to listen to when they're good. And the interesting thing about Burns and Allen is, and I'm sorry that I can't remember because again I'm driving. I can't remember the exact title, the original title of the Burns and Allen show, but it basically, long story short, it's the Gracie show basically, and that's what this is too. I mean, yeah, sure, it's George Burns and it's Gracie Allen, but the big thing here is that Gracie's the heart of it. Not just, and I don't even necessarily mean the emotional heart. I mean, George knew this too. She was the talent heart of it as well. I mean, he was the straight man who did some goofy stuff. She was just goofy as all get out. And, she did play ditzy, which was part of her character, probably because it was expected, but also because she just played it really well. I mean, the thing is, yes, she's a ditzy woman character, but it's not a comment on women. There were plenty of intelligent women on the show, or at least her friend on the show is smart, and it's very fun to listen to. Hold one second. Okay, so this is going long. I'm in the drive-thru doing this. I'm sorry it's going so long, but anyway, I mean, it's old radio sketches, old programs, one program each side, sponsored by Maxwell House, and just, I don't know, if you know any old radio comedy, it's typical, but it's also a little bit better than some of the other stuff you would have been listening to, mostly because of Gracie. George is fine. George is wonderful. George Burns is great. The first bit is, actually, one second. The bit that stands out the most of these two is one where Gracie wants George to go to basically wants him to become a doctor. There are just tons of gags about, well, that way, basically that he's not meant to be an entertainer, and he keeps demonstrating that through the old gag of him, quote unquote, singing, which is, the man knew he couldn't sing. That was a great gag, always fun. Even though I love that he released so many albums of music later on, which is, by the way, that's a long game. That's a long joke, but the bit in the album that I remember the most, that stood out the most anyway, for one reason, is that she wanted him to be a doctor, so she asks the doctor, "Can my husband work with you?" Like, that's the kind of farce these things are dealing with. And there's a misunderstanding because the doctors need somebody to experiment on, and they need to give this man a serum. Whoever they're going to experiment on is going to get a serum that will either make him live for 100 years or kill him. And that's the great thing. George Burns lived over 100 years old. Well, he lived to 100 years and some days. In it, he would have died. But it ends with him basically thinking he's going to perform for these guys. That's the other confusion. There's 3 levels of confusion on this. They think he's there for one thing. Gracie thinks he's there for another. And he thinks he's there for entirely a different thing. And he ends up bare naked with a bowler hat, dancing and singing. And it's very goofy, and also the thing that I love the most is just that the language and the just the characterizations are pretty modern. Other than, again, the ditzy lady, but that it's not that you don't see that now. But in comparison, if you at least give it some comparison with the one other female in the show, actually a couple other female characters, she's just the ditz of the entire show. And it is incredibly charming, and she's a great actress, and super fun. Now, the third album that I picked, again, which is the Stiller and Meara album. Problem is, I'm driving. I wanted to read something off of the back of it, but long story short, let's see. There's no smooth-talking straight man or stereotype naive female involved in this act. Not to say there aren't some sort of 60s mores at work in there, but they're only at work within the context of characters. So, characters being uncomfortable with, I think, a lesbian relationship. But it's one character. Again, it's in the context. That's the only thing that really stood out to me as far as that goes. What it's like is, listening to this is, and you can't help but compare it to Nichols and May because it's all rooted in improv. The speed with which Jerry Stiller and Ann Meara, Ben Stiller's parents, if you don't know, just the speed is just, and again, I think these were from improv to scripted, but the speed is great. The characterizations are amazing. Ann Meara she has this interesting range from her normal voice, which I guess I had never heard. Her actual normal voice sounds like a voice that Elaine May would sometimes do. which is interesting. But Meara, just, I don't know, she kind of blows me away. They've got all these different bits where there's a news crew interviewing a man who's just inside a whale, and it turns out to be Jonah. So you're kind of thinking it's in a modern context, but the assumption then is at some point it actually is taking place back in biblical times. So it seems there's a lot of relationship things, because that's inevitable when it's, when straight is the default as far as culture is concerned, as far as people think. So relationships are going to be what happens with a man and a woman. My favorite bit on it is probably the wrong number, where Jerry Stiller's character gets a wrong number, and she thinks he might be a pervert, but eventually it's very sweet, and he hits on her, and she hits on him back, and they make an arrangement, and the punchline is very funny. But it's just, I don't know, it's just very sincere, and I also really like when Jerry Stiller gets angry. You can see why they wrote those moments for him on King of Queens, or for, to a better extent, Seinfeld. Just so much, like I would say at least half of these, he has a chance to just raise his voice and scream and be the Jerry Stiller that we're used to. But again, his range is also incredible. His vocal, I just never expected him to have, because if you grow up knowing somebody in a certain capacity, you don't really necessarily associate that with range, because you're typecasting them in your brain. But I don't know, it's a lot of fun to listen to. I'd go into more detail if I wasn't driving, but these are all albums worth listening to for sure. So give them a shot, and follow us at Comedy on Vinyl wherever you can follow us, and subscribe here on YouTube. And I promise I'm going to catch up soon. But until then, thank you guys for watching, and as always, have a good thing.